Girl disappeared riding her bike. 10 years later, mom opens shed behind school. Karen Harper stared at the raindrops sliding down her kitchen window, each one a tiny clock counting the seconds of another day without Emily. 10 years had passed since her 11-year-old daughter vanished on that stormy afternoon in Brookdale, but time hadn't dulled the ache. It had merely changed it, like a wound that never properly heals. 10 years, she whispered to herself, tracing the outline of Emily's face in the framed photo on the windowsill. The image captured her daughter's gap-toothed smile and wild blonde hair that refused to stay in braids. Karen had taken it just a week before Emily disappeared. The morning mail sat unopened on the counter. Karen had been avoiding it lately. The 10-year anniversary of Emily's disappearance had stirred up the media again, bringing fresh rounds of "Where are they now?" stories and renewed speculation. She'd already declined 3 interview requests this week alone. With a sigh, she flipped through the envelopes, bills, advertisements, a community newsletter, until she reached a cream-colored envelope addressed in elegant handwriting. The return address belonged to Brookdale Elementary School. Karen's heart skipped a beat. Emily would have been finishing college by now, not elementary school. Why would they be writing to her? She carefully opened the envelope to find a formal invitation to Principal Gerald Whitman's retirement ceremony after 35 years of service. Whitman had been there when Emily disappeared, had organized search parties, had spoken at the candlelight vigil. He'd been kind, if somewhat distant, throughout the ordeal. But tucked behind the invitation was another sealed envelope, smaller and unmarked except for 7 words written in the same careful script. Private, for Karen Harper's eyes only. Karen's hands trembled as she opened it. Some truths stay buried too long. Before this place changes, go to the old shed behind the school. There's something you deserve to know. No signature. Nothing else. Just those 17 words that made her heart race and her mouth go dry. She read them again, then again, the paper shaking in her grip. The phone rang, startling her. Hello? Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Karen? It's Detective Martinez. I was just checking in. I know this week is difficult. Detective Sophia Martinez had been a junior officer when Emily disappeared. Now she headed the cold case division, and she never let a year pass without reaching out to Karen. I got a note. Karen blurted out before she could stop herself. A note? What kind of note? The detective's voice sharpened instantly. Karen read the message aloud, the words catching in her throat. Don't touch anything else in that envelope, Martinez instructed. I'm coming over. Within 20 minutes, Detective Martinez was examining the note with gloved hands at Karen's kitchen table. A decade of disappointments had taught Karen not to hope, but something felt different this time. It's Principal Whitman's handwriting, Karen said quietly. I recognize it from school notices. Martinez nodded slowly. His retirement ceremony is next week. The timing. I need to see that shed, Karen said, her voice steadier than she expected. We should do this properly, get a team. No. Karen's firmness surprised them both. For 10 years, I've waited while teams and experts and specialists found nothing. If this is another dead end, I need to face it myself first. She took a deep breath. But I'd appreciate it if you came with me. The detective studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Tomorrow morning, before school starts. I'll arrange access. That night, Karen couldn't sleep. She paced her living room, surrounded by the shrine of photos she'd never taken down. Emily riding her first bike. Emily winning the spelling bee. Emily hugging their old cat, Marmalade. The empty picture frames she'd bought over the years for milestones that never came sat in a box in the closet. High school graduation, prom, college acceptance. The community had been supportive at first. Searches, fundraisers, billboards with Emily's face. But as months turned to years, people moved on. They still treated Karen kindly, but she saw the pity in their eyes, the relief when conversations shifted away from her missing daughter. Through it all, Karen had never moved from the little blue house on Maple Street. She kept Emily's room exactly as it had been, dusting it weekly. She stayed active in the community, volunteering at the school library where Emily had loved to read. She quietly pursued every thin lead, every distant possibility. And she waited. Dawn broke with a gentle pink glow that belied Karen's churning emotions. She dressed carefully, jeans, sturdy boots, Emily's favorite color sweater for courage. Detective Martinez picked her up at 7, the school grounds still empty when they arrived. The maintenance shed stood at the far edge of the property, partially hidden by overgrown bushes and the shadow of the new gymnasium that hadn't existed when Emily was a student. It looked smaller than Karen remembered, its green paint peeling, the roof slightly sagging. A forgotten building awaiting demolition. A maintenance worker met them with keys, his face a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Mr. Whitman left instructions to give you full access," he explained, unlocking the rusted padlock. "Said it was important. I don't ask questions." As the door creaked open, revealing the musty darkness within, Karen felt a strange calm settle over her. Whatever waited inside, truth, disappointment, or something unimaginable, she would face it. For Emily. She stepped over the threshold, Detective Martinez close behind her, into the shadows that might finally hold answers. The smell hit Karen first, dust and mildew, with undertones of rusted metal and forgotten things. Cobwebs stretched across corners like ghostly curtains, trembling in the draft from the open door. Detective Martinez flicked on her flashlight, the beam cutting through decades of accumulated shadows. "School's changed so much," Karen said, her voice echoing slightly. "New computer lab, digital security system, that fancy athletic complex. But this place, it's like time stopped." She was right. While Brookdale Elementary had modernized around it, the maintenance shed remained frozen in amber. Shelves lined the walls, cluttered with ancient cleaning supplies and broken equipment. A stack of outdated textbooks teetered in one corner, their spines cracked and faded. Dented filing cabinets stood guard along the back wall, their once white surfaces now yellowed with age. "They're tearing it down next month," the maintenance worker said from the doorway. "Making way for an outdoor classroom space. Most of this junk's headed for the dumpster." Karen barely heard him. Her eyes had locked onto a child's mitten hanging from a hook, pink with a unicorn pattern. Emily had owned a pair just like them. She reached for it with trembling fingers. "Don't touch anything yet," Martinez cautioned gently, placing a hand on Karen's arm. "Let's be methodical about this." To the maintenance worker, she added, "We need some time alone. Please make sure we're not disturbed." Once he left, Martinez pulled on latex gloves and handed a pair to Karen. "I'm going to document everything with photos first, then we'll start searching. If Whitman sent you here, there must be something specific he wanted you to find." For 30 minutes, they worked in near silence, opening drawers, shifting boxes, examining every surface. Karen felt her initial hope curdling into disappointment. There was nothing here but dust and debris, the accumulated cast-offs of a school that had moved on while she remained trapped in the past. "This is useless," she finally said, frustration edging her voice. "Maybe it was some sick joke. Or maybe Whitman's losing his mind in old age." Martinez didn't respond immediately. She was studying the room's layout, her experienced eyes scanning the dimensions. "Something's off about this wall," she said suddenly, pointing to the rear of the shed. "The exterior measurements don't match the interior." Karen watched as the detective ran her hands along the paneling, pressing methodically. "There's a hollow space behind here. And look," she pointed to nearly invisible scratch marks on the floor. "Something heavy gets moved here. Regularly." Together, they pushed against different sections of the wall until a portion gave way with a reluctant groan, revealing a narrow door sealed with a simple sliding bolt. Behind it stood a boarded cabinet, clearly modified to hide its contents. The wood looked newer than the rest of the shed, the nails less rusted. "This was added later," Martinez observed, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "And someone went to considerable effort to conceal it." Using a crowbar from a nearby shelf, they carefully pried open the cabinet. Inside was a metal lockbox, a stack of sealed manila envelopes bound with faded ribbon, and something that made Karen's breath catch sharply, a plastic library card with Emily's name printed on it, the school's mascot smiling cheerfully from the corner. Martinez picked it up carefully, examining the barcode. We can check when this was last scanned. If it was after she disappeared. The implication hung in the air between them. Karen felt dizzy, gripping a nearby shelf for support. The detective gently placed the card in an evidence bag, then turned her attention to the lockbox. It wasn't locked, just latched shut, as if whoever had hidden it never expected it to be found. She opened it slowly, revealing a stack of handwritten pages covered in what Karen immediately recognized as Principal Whitman's neat script. It's dated, Martinez said, examining the top page. 1 week after Emily vanished. Karen couldn't speak. The room seemed to be tilting around her, the past collapsing into the present with dizzying speed. She watched as Martinez carefully removed the pages, placing them in order on a dusty workbench. Karen, the detective said softly. These look like confession notes. And there's something else. From beneath the papers, Martinez withdrew a small plastic bag containing a silver charm bracelet, the one Karen had given Emily for her 11th birthday, just a month before she disappeared. The tiny bicycle charm caught the flashlight beam, throwing fractured light across the shed walls. She was here, Karen whispered, her voice breaking. All these years, while I was searching everywhere else, there were clues right here. Right under everyone's noses. Martinez reached for her phone. I need to call this in. We need forensics document specialists. Wait. Karen pointed to the top page. There's a name here I don't recognize. Dana Kessler. Who is that? The detective scanned the page, her expression growing increasingly troubled. According to this, she was a new after-school volunteer. An education student doing her internship. She looked up at Karen, her eyes wide. Whitman writes that she was the last person to see Emily. Karen stared at the bracelet in its plastic prison, each charm a memory from her daughter's life. The ballerina from her first dance recital. The book for her love of reading. The star for the night sky she was so fascinated by. And now, after 10 years of wondering, the library card that suggested one unthinkable truth: Emily might never have left the school grounds on that rainy afternoon. By noon, the maintenance shed had transformed into a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the area as forensic technicians in white suits carefully catalogued and photographed every item from the hidden cabinet. Karen sat in Detective Martinez's car, clutching a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, watching the procession of evidence bags. The school had been placed on soft lockdown, students contained to classrooms while the investigation unfolded. Through the car window, Karen could see curious faces pressed against classroom windows, teachers struggling to maintain normal routines amid extraordinary circumstances. Karen. Martinez slid into the driver's seat, holding a manila folder. Her expression was unreadable. The document team has finished the preliminary analysis of Whitman's notes. Are you ready to hear this? Karen nodded, her throat too tight for words. It's not what we expected. Martinez began, opening the folder. According to Whitman's accounts, what happened to Emily wasn't a kidnapping or an attack. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake that spiraled into a cover-up. She handed Karen several photocopied pages, enlarged for easier reading. The day Emily disappeared, she had stayed after school to help with the new after-school reading program. Dana Kessler was a college student doing her education internship, her first day supervising kids alone. According to Whitman, Kessler had some kind of anxiety attack during the session. She left Emily and a few other children unattended near the athletic fields while she tried to compose herself in the bathroom. Karen's hands trembled as she read Whitman's neat handwriting. Ms. Kessler returned after approximately 15 minutes to find only 3 children waiting. When asked about Emily Harper, the children stated she had mentioned going to retrieve a book from her locker. Ms. Kessler, still distressed and inexperienced, assumed Emily had simply gone home afterward. But Emily never made it home, Karen whispered. Martinez nodded grimly. Whitman writes that when the first missing person report came in, he personally searched the school grounds. Behind this very shed, he found Emily's bicycle, The red one with purple streamers. Karen's head snapped up. Her bike was here? All along? They told us no trace was ever found. That's because Whitman removed it, Martinez said quietly. He panicked. The school was under district review that year. Budget cuts threatened programs on the chopping block. He was afraid that negligence with a new, improperly supervised intern would trigger lawsuits, investigations. So he hid evidence in a missing child case? Karen's voice rose in disbelief. He convinced himself Emily had run away or been picked up by someone she knew. He writes that he thought it would be resolved quickly, that she'd turn up at a friend's house or relative's place. Martinez's professional demeanor cracked slightly. By the time he realized the seriousness, he was in too deep. Karen stared at the pages, fury building inside her. And Dana Kessler? What happened to her? According to this, she came to Whitman the next day, hysterical about Emily's disappearance. He assured her it wasn't her fault, that Emily had been seen leaving school grounds, a lie he invented. He then suggested she take a leave of absence, which she did. She never returned to complete her internship. Rain began to fall, light drops tapping on the car roof in an eerily similar pattern to the day Emily disappeared. Karen watched the water bead on the windshield, distorting the world outside. Where is she now? This Dana Kessler? We're working on that, Martinez replied. She left the university program shortly after, changed her major. We have database searches running now. Karen flipped through more pages, scanning Whitman's confessions. One passage made her gasp. I kept the bike in her backpack, intending to anonymously report their location once the initial investigation cooled. But as weeks passed, I realized my actions had irreparably compromised the search. The bike wouldn't just be evidence of Emily's disappearance anymore, it would be evidence of my obstruction. My cowardice has haunted me these 10 years. There's more, Martinez said softly. The library card? It was scanned the day after Emily disappeared. At 6:17 a.m., before the school officially opened. Karen's world tilted. Someone used her card? Who would have accessed that early? Only staff with keys. Whitman himself often arrived before 6. The janitor, Mr. Collins, who retired 5 years ago. And the librarian, Karen finished. Mrs. Winters. Yes. Nancy Winters is still the librarian, though she's on medical leave right now, cancer treatment. Karen stared at the school building, 10 years of grief transforming into rage. So many people who might have known something, seen something. Martinez placed a gentle hand on Karen's arm. There's something else. Something that changes everything we thought about that day. She pulled out another photocopy, a school maintenance log from 10 years ago. There was a severe storm the afternoon Emily disappeared. The power went out in parts of the school at 3:45 p.m. Emergency lights would have been on in the main building, but not in outlying structures. Karen realized, a chill running through her. The old gymnasium annex had been converted to storage that year. It's connected to this maintenance shed by a service corridor. Martinez pointed to a notation in the log. Water damage was reported in that section the next day. The janitor attributed it to a leaky roof during the storm. Karen struggled to process the implications. You think Emily might have been caught in the storm, taken shelter somewhere on school grounds? It's possible. The forensics team found traces in the hidden cabinet. Mud consistent with the athletic field. Fabric fibers that matched the description of Emily's jacket. And Martinez hesitated. What? Karen demanded. Tell me. Blood. Very small traces, preserved in the seams of the cabinet. We're rushing DNA tests, but the type matches Emily's from her medical records. Karen's vision blurred, memories overwhelming her. Emily's fear of thunder. Her habit of seeking small, enclosed spaces when frightened. The way she'd hide in closets during storms, emerging only when the last rumble faded. We need to see that annex, Karen said, her voice steadier than she felt. Now. As they stepped out of the car into the light rain, Karen's phone rang, an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Mrs. Harper?" The voice was elderly, weak. "This is Gerald Whitman. I know the police are there now. There's something else you need to know about your daughter. Something I couldn't write down." Karen's grip tightened on the phone. "Where are you?" "Brookdale Memorial Hospital, room 412. Please come. Before it's too late." The call ended, leaving Karen standing in the rain, torn between the mystery of the annex and the promise of answers from the man who had hidden the truth for a decade. Room 412 at Brookdale Memorial Hospital was dimly lit, the blinds drawn against the afternoon sun. The steady beep of monitors provided a rhythmic counterpoint to Gerald Whitman's labored breathing. The once commanding principal of Brookdale Elementary now appeared shrunken, his skin translucent against the white hospital sheets. An oxygen tube snaked beneath his nose, and 4 lines trailed from both arms. Karen hesitated in the doorway, Detective Martinez close behind her. A decade of questions burned inside her, alongside a fury that threatened to consume her composure. "Mrs. Harper," Whitman rasped, his eyes fluttering open. "You came." "I'm here for answers," Karen said, remaining at the foot of the bed. "Not forgiveness." Whitman nodded weakly. "I don't deserve forgiveness. The doctors say it's pancreatic cancer, stage 4. I have weeks, maybe days." He coughed, a dry, rattling sound. "But I couldn't take this secret to my grave." Karen moved closer, her hands gripping the bed rail until her knuckles whitened. "We found the cabinet. The notes. Emily's things. I know. But there's more." Whitman fumbled for a cup of water. Martinez helped him drink, her expression professionally neutral despite the tension crackling in the room. "Dana Kessler," Whitman continued once he'd caught his breath. "After she left the school, she changed her name. Changed everything about her life. We've already got people looking for her," Martinez interjected. Whitman shook his head. "You won't find her that way. After what happened, after I convinced her to leave, she had a breakdown. She was hospitalized, then moved states. She's now Diana Keene. Lives in Minnesota. Married, 2 children." He pulled a folded paper from beneath his pillow and handed it to Martinez. "Her contact information. Everything I know about her current life." Karen's patience snapped. "This woman, this irresponsible girl, left my daughter alone during a storm, and you helped her start a new life while I've been living in hell for 10 years. It wasn't like that," Whitman pleaded. "She was just a college student, barely 21. When I told her I'd found Emily's bike that no one could know." "You told her to run," Karen finished, disgust evident in her voice. "I told her I would handle it," Whitman corrected. "That the school would take responsibility. But then when no trace of Emily was found, when the case went cold, I couldn't come forward without admitting to evidence tampering, obstruction of justice." Martinez had stepped away, already making calls based on the information Whitman had provided. Karen could hear her dispatching officers to track down Diana Keene. "There's something else," Whitman said, his voice growing weaker. "Something I only realized recently, going through old maintenance records while cleaning out my office." Karen leaned closer despite herself. "There was an old school annex behind the gymnasium. It was being used for storage during renovations that year. The storm that hit when Emily disappeared, it knocked out power to that section of the school. We know about the annex," Karen said. "We were about to search it when you called." Whitman's eyes widened slightly. "Then you need to know, there was a maintenance crawl space. Small, hidden behind shelving units. After Emily disappeared, they completed the renovations. That section was walled over, forgotten." Karen's heart began racing. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to look there. The contractor who did the work, Franco Builders, they kept records of everything. The original plans should show the crawl space." Martinez returned to the bedside, slipping her phone into her pocket. "We've located Diana Keene. Local police are bringing her in for questioning now." She glanced at Karen. "And I've just heard from the forensics team at the school. The blood samples are a match for Emily's DNA profile." Whitman closed his eyes, tears seeping from beneath his lids. I've destroyed so many lives with my cowardice. If I had just come forward that first day. Save your apologies. Karen cut him off. They're 10 years too late. As they turned to leave, Whitman called out one last time. The journal. Look for Emily's journal. She wrote in it every day. The drive back to the school passed in tense silence. Karen stared out the window at the familiar streets of Brookdale, seeing them through new eyes. How many times had she driven past the elementary school, never knowing that clues to her daughter's disappearance lay hidden within its walls? At the school, a flurry of activity greeted them. The forensics team had expanded their search to the old gymnasium annex. Construction equipment stood ready to open the walled-off section Whitman had described. We've got the original building plans from Franco Builders, the lead technician explained, unrolling large blueprints across a folding table. The crawl space is here, behind what used to be storage shelving. It wasn't much, just a maintenance access point for pipes and electrical conduits, but it was about 4 feet high and 6 feet deep. Karen studied the plans, her teacher's mind calculating quickly. Big enough for a small 11-year-old to hide in during a storm. Exactly what we were thinking, the technician agreed. And there's more. When the renovation crew sealed up that section, they reported some items missing from the storage inventory. School supplies, a small radio, even some packaged snacks from the cafeteria stockpile. Hope, that dangerous and fragile emotion Karen had suppressed for so long, flickered to life in her chest. She might have survived the initial night. Taken supplies. Martinez squeezed Karen's arm supportively. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. These are promising leads, but... She was interrupted by a commotion at the edge of the scene. A police cruiser had arrived, and officers were escorting a woman toward them. She was in her early 30s, her brown hair cut in a neat bob, her face ashen with fear and something else, recognition, when she saw Karen. Dana Kessler? Martinez asked, stepping forward. The woman nodded, her hands trembling. It's Diana Keene now, but yes. I've been expecting this day for 10 years. Her eyes filled with tears as she faced Karen directly. Mrs. Harper, I am so sorry. I've wanted to tell you the truth for so long. Behind them, the construction crew had begun carefully removing the drywall that sealed the forgotten crawl space. The whine of power tools momentarily drowned out conversation, and all eyes turned toward the growing opening in the wall. As the final section of drywall fell away, revealing the dark space beyond, a collective hush fell over the crowd. The lead technician aimed his flashlight into the darkness, illuminating something that made Karen's heart stop, a small plastic container, sealed with duct tape, with a name written across the top in a child's careful handwriting. Emily Harper's Things. Private. The plastic container sat on a folding table in the school library, now commandeered as a temporary investigation headquarters. It was an ordinary storage box, the kind sold at discount stores, its blue lid secured with layers of duct tape now brittle with age. Forensic technicians had carefully photographed and documented it before allowing Karen to be present for the opening. Karen's hands trembled as Detective Martinez, wearing latex gloves, gently peeled back the aged tape. The library, once Emily's favorite place in the school, was silent except for the soft sound of adhesive releasing after a decade sealed away. Diana Keene, formerly Dana Kessler, sat in a chair across the room, her statement already taken but her presence requested by Karen. I need to see this through, Karen had said. And so do you. As Martinez lifted the lid, the scent of paper and pencils wafted up, the unmistakable smell of a child's school supplies somehow preserved in this time capsule. On top lay a composition notebook, its black and white marbled cover instantly recognizable to Karen. Her journal, she whispered. The detective handed it to her, and Karen opened it with reverent care. Emily's handwriting filled the pages, not the neat script of school assignments, but the hurried, emotional scrawl of private thoughts. The final entry was dated one day after she had disappeared. Day 2 in my secret place. The storm was really bad yesterday, and I got scared when I was walking to my bike. I tried to go back inside, but the doors were locked. Then I saw the garden shed was open, so I went in there to wait. But then I heard strange noises and got even more scared, so I found this hiding spot in the walls behind the gym. It's like a secret passage. I think maybe I'm not supposed to be here, but I was too scared to leave. The lights went out, and I fell asleep for a long time. When I woke up, it was morning, but the school seemed empty. I snuck out to get my backpack from the shed and took some snacks from the big cabinets. I'm writing this with my flashlight. I think I'll try to go home later today, but right now I just want to stay hidden because I'll probably get in big trouble for being here overnight. If someone finds this and I'm not here, I went home to 42 Maple Street. My mom is probably really worried. Karen pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. She was alive. She was right here, hiding. Detective Martinez continued unpacking the container, each item a piece of the puzzle. Emily's flashlight, its batteries long dead. A small collection of granola bars and juice boxes, some partially consumed. School papers and colored pencils. A photo of Karen that Emily had kept in her notebook. And at the bottom, something unexpected, a bus schedule with a route circled in red marker, along with a crumpled $10 bill. Martinez held up the schedule. She was planning to take the bus home. This route passes 2 blocks from your house. But she never made it, Karen said, confusion evident in her voice. Diana spoke up from her corner, her voice small but steady. I might be able to explain that. When I was questioned after Emily disappeared, I told the police everything I remembered. But there was one detail that seemed so unimportant at the time. She took a deep breath. The day after Emily went missing, when I came to the school to talk to Principal Whitman, I saw a girl who looked like her boarding the eastbound bus. But it couldn't have been her, because everyone said she was missing. I convinced myself I was mistaken, imagining things because of my guilt. Eastbound? Martinez asked sharply. Not the route to Maple Street. Diana shook her head. No. The bus that goes to the Interstate Highway Station. Martinez was already on her phone, requesting transportation records from 10 years ago, security camera footage from the highway station if it still existed. Karen barely heard the detective's rapid-fire requests. She was lost in Emily's journal, reading her daughter's final messages from a decade ago. The investigation shifted into high gear. Within hours, they had confirmation. A ticket had been purchased for cash on the day after Emily's disappearance. A one-way fare to Portland, Oregon. A child traveling alone, telling the driver she was meeting her father. She ran. Karen realized, the truth dawning with painful clarity. She hid during the storm, and when no one found her, she thought she was in trouble. So she ran. Children that age don't always make logical decisions when they're frightened, Martinez said gently. She might have been afraid of being punished for being in a restricted area, for taking the supplies. Diana wiped tears from her eyes. This is my fault. If I hadn't left them unsupervised, if I'd done a proper head count. We all failed her, Karen said, surprising herself with the lack of anger in her voice. A decade of rage was giving way to something else, a desperate, fragile hope. But none of that matters now. What matters is, could she still be alive? Martinez nodded. It's entirely possible. There's no evidence of foul play. If she made it to Portland. The investigation expanded rapidly. Emily's photo and story went viral online, not as a tragic cold case, but as a potential miracle. Age progression software created an image of what she might look like now at 21. Local news stations in Oregon picked up the story. 3 days later, Karen's phone rang at 2:17 a.m. She answered immediately, sleep forgotten. Mrs. Harper? It was Martinez, her voice vibrating with controlled excitement. We have a lead. A woman working at a garden center in Eugene, Oregon recognized herself in the age progression photos. She goes by Ellie now. Karen sank to her knees, clutching the phone. Are you sure? She has a birthmark on her left shoulder. A small crescent shape. Martinez paused. Just like Emily's. The world seemed to stop spinning. 10 years of searching, of hoping and despairing, collapsed into this single moment of possibility. She's agreed to a DNA test, Martinez continued. And she wants to talk to you, Karen. She wants to come home. The Eugene airport hummed with typical afternoon activity. Travelers rushing between gates, announcements echoing overhead, emotional farewells and greetings playing out at security checkpoints. Karen Harper stood near the arrival gate, a woman frozen in time while the world flowed around her. Detective Martinez waited beside her, a steadying presence. Flight 327 from Portland just landed, she said softly. They should be deplaning in about 10 minutes. Karen nodded, unable to speak. The DNA results had come back 2 days ago, a 99.98% match. The woman calling herself Ellie Gardner was, without question, Emily Harper. Her daughter was alive. The miracle Karen had stopped believing in years ago had somehow, against all odds, materialized. What if she doesn't remember me? Karen whispered, voicing her deepest fear. According to the preliminary psychological assessment, Emily, or Ellie, as she now called herself, had few concrete memories of her life before age 12. A therapist had explained that trauma could fragment memory, especially in children. She wanted to come, Martinez reminded her gently. That's what matters now. The minutes stretched like hours. Karen clutched a small photo album she'd brought, Emily's first day of kindergarten, her winning the third-grade spelling bee, feeding ducks at the park, tangible fragments of a shared past that now seemed like another lifetime. And then, suddenly, she was there. A young woman with blonde hair cut in a practical bob, wearing jeans and a green flannel shirt, hesitated at the gate. Her eyes, those unmistakable hazel eyes that Karen saw every night in her dreams, scanned the waiting area with nervous apprehension. Standing beside her was Dr. Renata Walsh, the trauma specialist who had flown to Oregon to facilitate the reunion. They had spoken several times by phone, preparing both mother and daughter for this moment. Karen took one step forward, then another, her legs moving of their own accord. The young woman spotted her, recognition flickering across her face, not the joyful recognition of a child seeing her mother, but something more complex, the recognition of a photograph come to life, a story made real. Emily, Karen breathed. The young woman gave a small, uncertain smile. Most people call me Ellie now, she said, her voice mature but with an undercurrent that Karen recognized immediately, the same inflection, the same slight hesitation before important words. But I guess I was Emily first. They stood facing each other, separated by 10 years and a lifetime of experiences. Then, with a small sound that was half laugh, half sob, Karen opened her arms. After a moment's hesitation, Ellie stepped into her embrace. It wasn't the tearful, dramatic reunion Karen had imagined countless times. It was awkward, tentative. Two strangers with a profound connection neither fully understood yet. But as they held each other, something shifted subtly. A bridge formed across the chasm of lost years. I'm sorry, Ellie whispered. I should have tried to find you sooner. Karen shook her head. No. I'm sorry we didn't find you. That we failed you that day. The days that followed were a careful dance of rediscovery. Ellie's story emerged in pieces, shared during quiet conversations at Karen's kitchen table or walks through the neighborhood that had once been her home. After fleeing Brookdale, she had indeed reached Portland, where a kind-hearted waitress at the bus station took her in temporarily. Confused and frightened, Emily had concocted a story about an abusive home, begging not to be returned. The waitress, Rosa Mendez, had her own troubled history with the system and made a fateful decision. She brought Emily home instead of calling authorities. Rosa's sister and brother-in-law, unable to have children of their own, eventually adopted Ellie, giving her a new surname and a fresh start in Eugene. They were good people who had raised her with love, never knowing her true identity. Now they too were grappling with the revelation, supporting Ellie from afar as she reconnected with her birth mother. I had nightmares for years about being locked in a dark place, Ellie explained one evening. But I couldn't remember why or how. The therapists called it dissociative amnesia, my mind protecting itself by disconnecting from the trauma. Karen listened, her heart breaking and healing simultaneously. And now? What do you remember? Pieces, Ellie admitted. When I saw your house, our house, I remembered the creaky third stair. I remembered a cat named Marmalade. Small things are coming back. 1 week after Ellie's return, they received word that Gerald Whitman had passed away. His final statement had been formally recorded and provided to prosecutors, who ultimately decided not to pursue posthumous charges. Would you like to attend his memorial service? Karen asked Ellie carefully. The young woman considered this, then nodded. I think I would. Not for him, exactly. But for closure. The service was small, Whitman's reputation forever tarnished by the revelations of his deception. But among the sparse crowd was Diana Keene, who approached Ellie with trembling hands. I've thought about you every day for 10 years, Diana said, tears flowing freely. I never forgave myself. Ellie studied the woman whose momentary negligence had altered the course of her life. Then, with a grace that left Karen breathless with pride, she took Diana's hands in hers. I forgive you, she said simply. We were both victims of fear and bad decisions. 3 months later, on a bright spring morning, Brookdale Elementary held a dedication ceremony. The newly constructed library wing, modern and filled with light, bore a simple plaque. The Emily Harper Reading Room, where lost stories find their way home. As Karen and Ellie stood together at the podium, facing the community that had searched, mourned, and now celebrated this impossible reunion, Karen felt a decade of grief finally begin to lift. Ellie stepped forward, her voice steady as she addressed the gathered crowd. 10 years ago, I was lost in more ways than one. Scared and alone, I made a child's decision that had adult consequences. But today proves that no story truly ends until we write the final page. She smiled, glancing at her mother. I was lost, but I found my way back, not just home, but to the truth. And that made all the difference. The truth had indeed set them free, not to reclaim the years that were lost, but to begin writing the chapters that still waited to be told.